Alright everybody, I've got a confession to make. I've been trying to keep this quiet for a long while, but I think it's finally time I admit it. I was a Five Nights at Freddy's kid. I can hear you all collectively hitting the unsubscribe button, and it's okay. I don't blame you. I can also hear you commenting about me starting my Sonic community video the same way. But listen, I have a lot of dumb obsessions in my closet. So yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's. A series of indie games created by one Scott Cawthon. Now Scott was just a small little indie game developer and animator, making Christian animations and games about anthropomorphic animals. Yeah, that Christian comment is gonna get a little weird the more we explore this stuff. His games didn't really receive much recognition, and when they did it was usually negative, with a recurring comment relating to the appearance of his characters, comparing them to scary animatronic animals, such as the ones found at Chuck E. Cheese, which is like a real place that people eat at. Where is your self-worth, America? Anyways, while initially discouraged by this feedback, Scott decided to double down and use this criticism to create what would become Five Nights at Freddy's, a series of horror games about killer animatronic animals trying to kill you, the player. As many of you above the age of 8 would know, this series immediately skyrocketed in popularity. It was everywhere. Sequels, books, music videos, fan animations, tons of merchandise based around the four same recolored characters, and whatever this is. And this isn't to mention the absolute assault on our YouTube recommended page. Everywhere you turn, it seemed nobody could have enough FNAF. We got reviews, let's plays, theories, dare I say game theories. How could I not? And for some reason this oversaturation killed the series for them. What seemed like a neat little indie horror game quickly became a mainstream mess, with everyone trying to capitalize off it. And by for some, I mean not me, I ate all this up back in 2014. At the ripe old age of 12, FNAF was just the right thing at the right time. And if you're thinking, wait a second, 12? But isn't this series about killers and souls of the damned and weird official sexualization of animals? Well, yes. Something I don't think a lot of marketing companies realize is that kids don't like being treated as kids. Especially early teenagers will gravitate towards stuff that says being a little too old for them. It makes them feel hip and radical. It's actually the strategy used when marketing Sonic the Hedgehog back in the day. And I guess it's kind of worrying that in the 90s what was cool for kids was a wisecracking blue hedgehog, and in the 2010s it's a fixation on characters that hit the kids with the pointy things and the red stuff comes out. Speaking of Sonic, I'd like to remind you that my friend, yeah that's right, my friend, has a second channel where they talk about random Sonic topics during the absence of Cybershell. But now Cybershell has come back, but my friend wants to keep making them anyway. Yeah, so go check that out after this. So naturally at the time I was obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's. I'd laugh along with Markiplier's videos, intellectually dissect the lore alongside MatPat, and because I wanted to support them so much, I bought each game on Steam as they're released. And well, after the 4th entry I thought FNAF was lame and moved on from my life. The trend was over, liking Five Nights at Freddy's was no longer cool, and I shifted my focus back to my other, more socially acceptable obsessions like Sonic. Yeah, okay, I can't even say that with a straight face. And for the next few years I skipped out on the new entries, assuming Scott did nothing but milk the franchise into the ground for as much revenue as possible, until one day I realized, wait a second, I haven't actually played a single one of these games for longer than 5 minutes. I came to realize that despite buying each new entry, I was much more obsessed with the hype and buzz around it than to actually sit down and play them for myself. Well, that and I was too scared. And no, I'm not going to bring up some old video of me playing Five Nights at Freddy's as a small child that I at one point uploaded to this very channel with no self-awareness or sense of shame.
Ah!
What?
Right. I just burned my finger on my radiator.
Yet.
Ah!
So yeah, I figured why not take a very deep dive back into Five Nights at Freddy's, looking back at the games I fixated on so much as a kid. And look, I even bought the ones I missed out on to see how much the franchise evolved over the years. Now this is what true peak performance looks like. On top of that, I may or may not have gone on a Markiplier and game theory binge through all the games again because I've lost all control in my life, and now I gotta know when the bite of 87 was, because MatPat says,
Who is the purple guy?
but then Markiplier says,
Was that the bite of 87?
and then MatPat replies with Mark saying, hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome to Five Nights at Freddy's. No! I'm not gonna be a Five Nights at Freddy's fan. Not again. Without further ado, it's time to go back to square one and ask ourselves, was Five Nights at Freddy's ever really good? That title won't make any sense if I end up changing my mind before the video comes out, so how about... yeah, okay, here we go. Here is the ultimate Five Nights at Freddy's retrospective. But first, Since I'm spending the night in this office, I gotta make sure nothing sneaks in to steal my personal items. It's a good thing I brought my Ridge wallet, with its sleek and stylish design that fits comfortably in my pocket. Last night I took my old wallet in here, and that dang old Freddy Fazbear snatched it right out of my pocket. But the Ridge holds up to 12 cards with room for cash too. Comes in 30 different colors and styles, and has a lifetime warranty. I'm using the titanium wallet, which is really convenient. And there are some other cool products on their site too, like this useful waterproof backpack I'd recommend. So head on over to ridge.com/lsmark and use code LSMark for 10% off, and free worldwide shipping. Link in the description. Okay, here we go, the game that started it all. The original Five Nights at Freddy's. Honestly, going back to this one after so long makes it seem so quaint.
Yeah, click on his nose, bro.
You're the new security guard at the children's entertainment restaurant Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. The only issue is you're working the night shift, and the once friendly animatronics decide to get a bit frisky at nighttime. So you're tasked with monitoring the characters while making sure they don't come into your room to grab you and stuff you inside a suit, therefore killing you. Right from the title screen, I think this game is amazing when it comes to atmosphere. Its visuals and sounds, while simple, are super effective. Just from the ambient sounds with the lights buzzing in your ears, really gets you going and not in a weird way. You can pull up your camera system, and by doing that you can select to monitor one room of the pizzeria at a time. Only problem is there are 4 animatronics, so the game becomes a mad dash to try and find each of them fast enough so you can track where they're headed. And speaking of the animatronics, let's take a look at Fazbear and crew. Their designs are perfect. Too many horror mascots are designed with the mindset that the more blood equals the more scary, or they'll just go completely overboard with the features, creating something that just looks silly in the end. But the Fazbear gang's designs are great. First we've got Freddy, who is just like the most perfect Chuck E. Cheese knockoff. The bow tie and hat really sells the old-timey look that adds to the creepiness. His design is great. Look how happy I was to meet him last year. Then his 2 sidekicks are Bonnie, the band's guitarist, and Chica, who I still can't believe people looked at and said, "Oh yeah, I'll have a slice of that please." The way they all move is great too. During the actual game they're mostly just still images along for everything else in the game, but the initial trailer for the game has small snippets of them moving around, and it's genuinely really creepy. I wouldn't mind seeing this done more. The 3 start in the main stage and will eventually work their way towards your office. But they're not the only guys you gotta be on the lookout for. As over in Pirate's Cove, another animatronic will decide to come out and say hi if you don't check on him after a while. Foxy the Pirate, who also has a great design. I really can't get over how well these characters are able to be creepy with not being over the top or obvious about it. To your right and left are 2 doors, in which you have the option to turn on the hallway light, and if you see something out there you can then close said doors.
What would Golden Freddy tweet if he was going out for a beer with regular Freddy?
What would he tweet?
I'm going out with Fazbear to get some Faz beer.
Oh.
Now this is all fine and dandy until you realize that every single thing you do affects how much power you're using. Turn on the light, you use power. Pull up the camera, you use power. Close the door, you use power. It costs power to close the door? Well, isn't that ass backwards? Alright, check that one off my generic comments about Five Nights at Freddy's list. Check. What's next? Five Nights at Freddy's? Why does he bother coming back? If I were in video game, I would not do that. You only have a limited amount of power, and when it runs out, all the power in the building goes off, and you're as good as dead. You know, unless you get one of those clutch moments where the clock turns to 6 AM right before you're about to die. To this day, I wonder if that was an intentional inclusion or not. Because of this quite literal ticking clock element, it really raises the tension as you're playing and constantly keeps you on your toes. Do you want to play it safe but risk losing more power? Or make yourself more open while preserving as much battery as possible? It's quite the unique idea, and reminds me of a more horror-themed take on that old Sega CD game Night Trap, where you looked through cameras to track the killers of this house full of girls. And this tension is vital to keep you invested, as this is really all the game has going for it. You just go from night to night with it getting slightly harder as you go on, with you needing to check on Foxy more, and eventually Freddy himself will get more active. And you do this until you eventually survive how many nights? That's right, 7. And this game remains to be incredibly challenging throughout. You know, except for when you figure out that monitoring Chica and Bonnie is basically pointless because you can just wait for them to show up at the door and then close them, meaning all you really have to do is keep your eye on Freddy and Foxy. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Oh no, I've run out of power. Oh god, there he is coming for me. Oh Lord in heaven, I can only imagine what horror awaits me as this cheery song is finished playing. Oh. Jump scares are not scary, there I said it. Now jump scares can scare you, yes, but they in and of themselves are not scary. It's like when someone says they're afraid of clowns. Yeah, they can scare you, but I think you can admit they're not scary. I can much more appreciate something that gets me in the mood where I've got goosebumps and I'm looking around my room in fear of what might be out there. A jump scare just makes me go, ugh! Oh, piss off. In terms of story, it really shocked me just how simple it was kept. In a good way, of course. We all know story is not something this franchise needs to complicate more. During the week, you get calls from this guy on the phone called Phone Guy. Phone Guy is where you get most of the lore from. From how he describes things along with the newspaper stories you can sometimes see during gameplay, it all heavily implies something deeper going on that has ruined the restaurant's image. Something beyond poor customer service. In fact, it instead shows that a mass murder occurred at the premises, when a man dressed in a character suit lured 5 children into a back room and killed them, along with him reporting an event known as the Bite of 87. After this, complaints were made about the animatronics emitting foul odors and leaking blood and mucus from their eyes and mouths. Yeah, it doesn't take a mini MatPat to uncover what happened here. And despite me saying there were only 4 main animatronics, you can actually find a 5th one by chance, Golden Freddy, who can occasionally pop on screen and actually crashes your game. Because isn't it fun to get to 5 AM on night 5 only to have your game crashed by a pissed off golden child? To me, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 is a great game that nails the tone and atmosphere I want out of an indie horror game, with addicting gameplay that manages to have actual strategy to it. With my only complaint being the payoff to it all being a simple jump scare is kinda lame. But that didn't deter people, as the game was still a huge hit. And what does Scott do when he has a certified success on his hands? He releases a sequel only 4 months later. Scott did in fact have a couple other non-Five Nights related games he considered working on, but decided to go back to FNAF for a sequel. I can only assume after seeing the great, big gaps in the lore. The hype around Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was massive. I remember this teaser trailer catching me so off guard. Scott was posting teaser images showing dismantled versions of the old animatronics, compared to the brand new and improved sleeker models. Discussion erupted. What would this game entail? How can we defend ourselves with no doors? Will we be able to boop Freddy's nose? Yes.
You could make that in a day, like if you do laboring on a.
Well, maybe we should try earn more money at Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and then it's gonna transition to Five Nights at Freddy's 2. FNAF 2 attempts to one-up the original game in every way. There are now 3 vantage points the animatronics can use to attack you, from the middle and your left and right vents. Yep, that's right, there are now vents and they can crawl in them. With no doors, your method of protecting yourself relies on 2 things. Your flashlight, which can deter away animatronics approaching you, or a Freddy Fazbear mask, which once you put on can confuse the animatronics' new security system database and therefore will leave you alone. And to continue with this theme of, let's do the first game again, but more, we are presented with a bunch of new faces to get to know. To start with our main 3, they've all been given makeovers with these new toy versions of them, and whoa yeah, I'll have a slice of that please. Is what some weird people would be saying.
She is such a bad bitch, though. I will f the shit out of that robot, man. I'm not even.
Foxy's counterpart is Mangle, a mess of parts that kids would take apart and put back together again, which doesn't seem like the safest party activity. On top of all these guys, we've got 2 brand new characters. The first being Balloon Boy. When he comes into your office, he greets you kindly and proceeds to take your flashlight battery from you. And the final character is the Puppet. It might also be called the Marionette, I can't exactly tell, so I'm just gonna go with Puppet since it's easier to say. There's also 2 hidden animatronics known as Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie, also known as RWQFSFSXYC, because that doesn't confuse things at all. Shadow Bonnie has a 0.0001% chance of showing up in your office, but staring at it for too long causes your game to crash. Of course it does. At first my initial reaction to all this was, well what's just stopping me from keeping an eye on the main 3 attack areas and not even bothering with the cameras? And that's where camera 11 comes in. Oh, camera 11. That's where Balloon Boy and the Puppet reside, but screw him, the focus is on the Puppet. They sit inside a music box, and we can see that we have the option to wind it up to keep it at bay. So now, because there's no Foxy to keep an eye on, this is our incentive to watch the cameras, as if not the box will open and... yeah, that.
You will.
I guess that was supposed to scare me. Sadly, this game also mostly relies on the jump scares as the main form of attack, which again, is effective for like the 1 second where it occurs but has no lasting impact on the player. And maybe it's just me, but I also don't think this one is as good when it comes to atmosphere. I think the toy animatronics go a bit overboard with the cute factor, and while that's clearly intentional, it makes them not scary in the slightest. It's like Scott hit the perfect balance with the designs in the first one and went way too far astray with this one. And to fall in line with this theming of going too far astray, let's talk about what everyone is slowly starting to care about more than the games. Let's talk about the lore. So in FNAF 2, you also take the role of a different security guard on the night shift at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. As you proceed through the nights, the phone guy discusses some police investigations that's going on regarding the restaurant, and later the location is put into lockdown due to an event we're never told about, and then is eventually closed down. After beating the game, we receive a check that is dated 1987, and this is when all the 10-year-olds' minds collectively exploded. Holy crap, bro, we got ourselves a prequel, baby! Not only does the game establish two separate Freddy restaurants, but implies that there was in fact another Freddy restaurant before this one. The possibilities for lore are truly limitless. And what helps this is the variety of secret minigames you can play after getting a game over, that are presented in this weird Atari style that further adds to the lore. The most interesting minigames are the ones that depict a fun day at Freddy's, as a crying kid outside has a car drive up to them and stabs them. And another that depicts the puppets placing kids' souls inside each of the animatronics from the first game, basically confirming that plot point from the first one. Although one common theme between all these minigames is a mysterious, smiling purple guy that fans have creatively dubbed Purple Guy. And that's FNAF 2. I think in terms of gameplay and atmosphere to step down from the original, but its importance to the franchise can't be ignored, with fan favourites such as the puppet and of course Purple Guy, along with it embracing the ambiguity of the lore for the players, which will be further explored in the next entry, Five Nights at Freddy's 3. I think the build-up for FNAF 3 was when the hype for this franchise was at its highest. People were dissecting every inch of the teaser images posted on Scott's website, looking for every secret possible in the hopes of piecing together what he could be planning. Scott also released a few troll games in this time that further added to the mystery of what was going on with it, with him clearly relishing in the attention. Most of the speculation revolved around this game's new animatronic. He was described as a hybrid, which was leading people to theorize that he would be a combination of all previous robots. And on top of that, people were finding secret screenshots depicting what appeared to be a corpse inside the suit. To say people were excited would be an understatement. Batman Arkham Knights, the Phantom Pain, silly point-and-click game was clearly the most hyped release of 2015. But something that comes with all this hype is a little thing called expectations. And what people expected from this game was monumental. Most assumed the series was going to cap off as a trilogy, so there was the intent to finally explain all the lore, which was becoming more and more convoluted with each new theory thrown in the ring. And on top of that, delivering an experience that was scarier than the previous two, despite the people who are really into this franchise sort of becoming impervious to jump scares at this point. So in March of 2015, only 4 months after the release of FNAF 2, the third entry finally released, and well, a lot of people were disappointed. Oh no, did Five Nights at Freddy's finally jump the Shark-o-matronic? Or was the buildup of, again, 4 months, just too long for the payoff to be satisfying? Well, off the bat, I think Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is a major step up from 2 in terms of atmosphere. This game really likes the color green, and it works greatly in helping it stand apart from the previous 2. What also does that is instead of coming across like it's trying to just be Five Nights at Freddy's More Edition, it feels like it took the general idea of FNAF and tried a new approach with it. So the unique thing about this one is that there's only one animatronic to worry about. Springtrap. You're taking control of another security guard, this time working at a place called Fazbear Fright, a horror attraction based off the stories of murders at the original locations. And for this new attraction, they're lucky enough to find this guy lying around at one of the old places. So of course they stick him in there with you, hoping everything will be hunky-dory. So in order to get Springtrap to avoid you at night, you'll have to monitor him on the cameras and lure him away using a voice speaker. If having one animatronic instead of a bazillion, like the last one, makes you think this game is any easier, then think again. Even merely looking for Springtrap in this game is an issue, because for some reason, despite taking place in the future, the cameras are 10 times more fuzzy than the others. And that's not to mention the entire ventilation system you have to watch out for. Speaking of, to make sure you aren't just spamming the audio cues continuously to lure Springtrap away, there are 3 factors you gotta keep an eye out for in your room. If your audio runs out, you can no longer play the cues, giving him no reason to not come and attack you. If your video runs out, you can no longer see the feeds, meaning he has no reason to not attack you. And if the ventilation runs out, then you'll start breathing heavily and hallucinating, meaning yeah, he's coming to attack you. Interestingly, your hallucinations come in the form of phantom animatronics, based off of the previous games such as Balloon Boy, Foxy, Mangle, the Puppet, Chica, and Freddy. Basically everybody but Bonnie is here strangely. Oh wait, yeah, duh. I understand the point of this inclusion. You know, you want the player to have to worry about something other than the animatronic to put their guard down. But by night 5, every time you hear that goddamn ear-bleedingly annoying buzzing sound go off, you start to reminisce about the silence of the first entry. Although I don't think too many people cared about this step back in gameplay. Sadly, at this point the game itself wasn't important to anyone. The story was where all the attention was with this one. Everyone wanted answers. Well, maybe MatPat didn't, or else he'd be out of a job. The game continues to have little mini-games, but this time you get them between nights, instead of from game overs. And in these you have to roam around the pizzeria from FNAF 2 until being torn apart by Purple Guy. But the focus here is on the hints, which you then have to use during the following nights. Now some of these are fairly straightforward, such as clicking all the cupcakes, pressing arcade buttons, but some are completely asinine, like pressing a number combination on the tiles on the wall. These take you to a variety of new minigames, and within these games you'll have to purposefully glitch them to unlock hidden parts of the hidden minigames. I have no idea how anyone had the patience to fiddle around with these in order to find that out, but it must be done, as this gets you the good ending to the game. That's right, we got good and bad endings now, bloody perfect. So what does this ominous tale end with? Okay, so at this point in the story, Fredbear's Family Diner was a small establishment where outside a child is murdered from a mysterious purple guy. Later, Fazbear Entertainment is formed, and a new establishment is founded where the animatronics feature a special spring lock ability that allows them to act as a hybrid. See, there it is. Which allows a user to jump inside the suit and control it, although these suits have one fatal flaw. More on that later. But this is also where the purple guy would disguise himself in a Fazbear-themed suit and lure children out to murder them. 5 to be exact. And the puppet then saves the dead children's souls by stuffing them in the suits of the current iterations of Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Freddy, who are now starting to ooze blood and mucus, causing the place to be shut down. A new restaurant is then opened, with brand new animatronics. But then an event now known as the Bite of 87 happened, which resulted in someone's frontal lobe being bitten off, which has now gotten the new establishment shut down, where it's then briefly rebranded with fixed up versions of the animatronics from 2 locations ago. But I presume the stigma of having your chain being associated with a bunch of child murders probably isn't that good for business, and it was finally shut down. And this is when the purple guy makes his grand return to finally dismantle the robots out of fear of them hunting him, I guess. And the souls of the children escape to kill him. Then he finds the old Golden Bonnie hybrid and hides in it, but because of the flaw I mentioned, the spring locks start to lock when the suit has gotten too damp, and they crush Purple Guy's bones, killing him. Until 30 years later, a horror attraction based on the events is now opened, where they've included the old Spring Bonnie suit now known as Springtrap as part of the attraction. Purple Guy's still inside, and on the last night the building finally burns down due to faulty wiring, where things are finally put to rest. And thus puts a semi-neat little bow on the series. Scratch that, this is not neat in the slightest. Like 1 location we don't see in the games I would accept, but 2, and one of them also featured the same robots as FNAF 1, making this a whole other level of confusing, but you know what? At least it's all over, and as MatPat promised, all the questions are answered. Wait, why are there like 50 more videos in this play? Oh no. So yeah, originally Scott wanted to end the series as a trilogy. He did everything he wanted to do and was finally going to set out on a new adventure. But there was just one road bump in his plan. Yes, it appears that Scott was displeased with the jump scare in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. And I can very much see where he's coming from. Oh, yeah, sorry, I mean. Oh, no. In the others, it either features the characters lunging towards you or manically shaking you, but here it's just, hey, I'm going to McDonald's, you want anything? And so Fnaf 4 was put into development, which Scott set out to make the scariest Fnaf game yet. Dude, what the hell are you doing? Can you see I'm working on a video? Yeah, that's what I thought. While a lot of people had dropped off the FNAF train at this point, myself included, I still kept an eye on the development of Five Nights at Freddy's 4. And it seems Scott is taking his time with it, coming out on Halloween night, and then it released 4 months earlier. FNAF 4, the perfect summer's game. The teasers for this game had a lot of people hyped. The animatronics seemed to be more detailed than ever, almost as if they were coming out of a nightmare. I think we're in for our scariest adventure yet, and it's dubbing itself the final chapter, so I bet he's gonna go all out on this one. Then the game came out and people got really mad at PewDiePie for not being scared by it.
Oh shit. What did I do wrong?
I honestly miss when this was the most controversial thing he found himself in. In this game you take control of this young boy What's-His-Face. At night, he's found himself at the bottom of his bed, avidly keeping a check on his for some reason 2 doors into 2 hallways, and his closet. Why is that? Well, it seems that the animatronics have followed him home and are out to get him. Followed him home is in quotes, by the way. I know they don't literally do that, Mr. Commenter. Yeah, I know what you're about to do. Now, Fnaf 1's focus was on power management, Fnaf 2 was on time management, and Fnaf 3 was about playing the offensive. So to differentiate itself, Fnaf 4's gimmick is all about sound, and how well you can keep quiet and pay attention, which in retrospect probably isn't the best idea meant for a series where 99% of the advertising comes from overactive screaming Let's Players. So for the first time in the series, you can now run to each of the 3 spots and open the doors, and flash your light to see what's outside. But by God, if you hear even the slightest sound, then you need to immediately act on it. If you hear them in the halls, you shine your light on them, and if you hear them right up next to you, then shut that door. While not good for YouTube, I think this idea does wonders of building up the atmosphere of feeling alone at night and just taking in every subtle sound you hear. It also basically forces you to wear headphones and crank that baby up, so whenever you get jump scared, you really feel it.
Mom, right?
That scared me. The layout is basically a copy of FNAF 1, where Bonnie will come from your left and Chica will come from your right. Similarly for Foxy, you have to keep checking on him or else he'll come out and attack you. But for Freddy, you have to keep a watch behind you, for these 3 little Freddos sitting on your bed, as all 3 together summon Nightmare Freddy to attack. In between levels, you play a minigame, this time titled Fun with Plush Trap, where you have to listen out for the movements of a plush spring trap sitting across the hallway, and try to shine your light on him when he lands on the X, as succeeding will allow you to start the next night at 2 AM, which in these games are a massive advantage. Now mastering this is all fine and well until night 5, where all that is thrown out the window, with the sole attacker being Nightmare Fredbear. I think this was a really clever way of evolving the formula, while also giving the game more of a scare factor, which seems to have worked with many claiming it's the scariest game in the series. Although I don't know, something about the jump scares just doesn't sit right with me. Maybe it's how slow they are. In the first it felt like you were being jolted back and forth, but now it just looks like they're yelling in your face. He also released a Halloween update for the game, I suppose to make up for the release being... well, what is the opposite of delayed? And all this isn't to mention the Nightmare Night, which features all 4 robots and a new one called Nightmare. And after beating this, you're presented with a dark room, 1 light shining down, revealing a small locked box. I think we should talk about the plot. So this story is told through the eyes of a child, as his plush friend Fredbear gives him tips and warns him of his brother, who throughout every night progressively reveals just how low he can go, as it goes from simple scars and a Foxy mask, to once and for all grabbing him at a birthday party and shoving his head inside the mouth of Fredbear, to where it decides to chomp down and take a bite. Well, that was simple actually. A straightforward story, and we finally get to know who committed the bite of 87? Scott must be feeling generous today. Or was he? Because telling a cohesive story was 1 line below, make the game more scarier on his to-do list, Scott decided that he'd throw the date 1983 into the ring. So is this really the bite of 87? Or is it the new bite of 83 we gotta worry about? Who are we playing as? The boy living out each night chronologically with the cutscenes? Or is this the brother we're playing as being haunted by the memories of what he did to his brother? And again, that's not even to mention what's in the box. We get the message, perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. But this is the FNAF fanbase. What are they doing if not endlessly speculating about every minor pixel in these games? And to kill all dramatic effect, let me bring up that Scott has claimed that he originally did have a vision for what was inside the box, but decided against it last minute, deciding to leave it ambiguous, at least until he could find another use for it.
You know, I felt that it had all gone kind of it had strayed too far from an actual story in a way. You know, it went too broad for interpretation, and that left people unsatisfied. And he kind of said that he thinks the contents of the box changed over the years. You know, and I bet nobody gave that a whole lot of thought, but I saw that and I was like, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. The contents of that box have changed over the years because, you know, it's for that very reason. It's because, you know, of what I was intending the game to be when it happened. And then after the reaction of it, I was like, I need to craft this into something better.
I just wanted to bring that up in case anyone tries to tell me there was never supposed to be anything there, or what the box contains was really inside us all along. Or even worse, an embarrassing photo of SpongeBob at the Christmas party. At this point in the series, I was so tired of it drip feeding us info, I lost interest in trying to piece something together, knowing that the next game could just go and undo all that, so I'm just gonna go along for the ride and see where this shit show takes me. And Tom, you're a master of jokes, as I heard.
I am indeed. So, a polar bear walks into a bar, and he looks at the barman, and the barman looks at him, and the polar bear opens his polar bear mouth and he says, "Excuse me, sir, could I have a pint of..." And the barman says, "Why the long pause?"
Scott sees Five Nights at Freddy's 4 as its own little ending to the series of games. Basically, he feels he told a story throughout the 4 games, but many fans actually weren't satisfied with how the events of the plot seemed to unfold, especially in terms of the box. And not wanting to end the series on a low point, Scott decided to once again make another entry in the series that attempts to once and for all make a definite, satisfying conclusion. But as we'll soon see, the series continues to plunge into absurdity with bizarre concepts that only confuse things more. But I'll save the details for later, okay? You can't see, but I'm winking right now. But now, after making his scariest game yet, Scott needed to unwind. So what was he gonna do? Yeah, we're going there. This is it. This is the exact moment when I said, okay, I'm out. He clearly doesn't care anymore and is just doing it for the money. This was only perpetuated by the massive amount of merchandising the series was now beginning to receive. Funko managed to acquire the license to the series and then milked the franchise for all it's worth. I assume they guessed it was just a dumb trend and that it was going to be over soon, so wanted to capitalize on it as much as possible. We got t-shirts, action figures, plushies, and the holy grail, Funko Pops. It doesn't even really matter if Funko got it anyway, as it didn't stop the influx of bootleg designs and merch based off the series. Alright, well, I failed to rip it, so that was like... the joke doesn't work, that was a waste of £40. The Fnaf World trailer had everyone confused. The next entry would be an RPG that sports new chibi marketable versions of these characters? Alright, this game was released only 7 months after Fnaf 4, which sure is the longest time taken to release one of these games. But this wasn't a simple point-and-click arcade-style game, this was a fully fledged RPG. And that's not to mention he once again decided to throw it up ahead of schedule. And while that may have worked in the past, these poor practices seem to have caught up with him. So upon release, the game was slammed for the amount of bugs, its art style, unfinished gameplay, and not being able to take this, Scott took it off the Steam store and issued an apology for the game's quality. This was an extremely good move on Scott's part, and showed fans that he had some integrity, and was willing to acknowledge when he screws up. And since then has gone on to say, releasing Fnaf World was a very important lesson he needed to be taught about respecting the fans, as at the time he was heading into games with the mindset that fans would enjoy it no matter what.
It just served as a really important lesson for me, that you should never take, it taught me to never take for granted how special it is to have a group of people who are eager to play what you make.
And I knew about none of this. A couple of weeks ago when I posted a tweet about my FNAF Steam library, I got a ton of people asking me how I had this one, only to realize I bought it day one and never played it or cared enough to get a refund. I'll be selling my Steam account to the highest bidder, bidding starts at $1 million. But what about this new game? Was Scott's swan song completed with him finally releasing an amazing RPG to go down in the ages as one of the greats? I mean, it's fine, I guess. The most noticeable difference right off the bat is the graphics. While the original was displayed with the same Atari-style visuals of the minigames, we now have a lush 3D overworld to... Ugh. Maybe the Atari style wasn't so bad, this looks like a mobile phone game. I'm gonna be honest, I did not play this for very long. It was just a very by-the-books RPG, even with the new patch that actually allowed you to see character experience, levels, and attacks. Yeah, this game was initially released without any of those, and despite the wide array of characters spanning across every FNAF game, it's just sort of boring and not very fun. I'm sure hardcore FNAF fans got a kick out of the new update, especially with how meta it got at the end, but personally I couldn't care less for this. But then he released the Halloween update. The Halloween update opened up a brand new map and gave you the opportunity to unlock extra more powerful characters by playing through some minigames. And oh boy, these sure are minigames. First we've got Foxy Fighters, which is a 2D space shooter that features voice acting.
Voice acting? No! He's gone too far this time. You need to shut this game down.
And don't you worry, we get many meta jokes about this fact, even fighting the boss Soul Dozer from one of Scott's older games, The Pilgrim's Progress. We've also got Five Nights at Freddy's 57, Freddy in Space, which is a Mega Man style game, where you have to try and collect cupcakes to upgrade your gun and get to the final boss. a realistic picture of Scott's face. Then there's Foxy.exe, a not so subtle parody of Sonic.exe, where you walk in the dark. Ooh, spooky. And finally, Scott decided to make his own version of one of those troll games like Cat Mario that just sets it up to kill you and heavily relies on trial and error. Where you play as Chica running from a giant rainbow voiced by Debbie... Wait a minute, Debbie Derryberry, the voice of Jimmy Neutron, isn't this? She'd be in this game but refused to be in my video. You've made a very powerful enemy on this day, Mrs. Derryberry. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, and I know the FNAF fans aren't gonna like me for this, but I think the attempts at being meta in this, while charming, are kinda annoying and not very funny. I don't know, I feel like that maybe it just sort of tarnishes the brand a little. I get needing to poke fun at yourself, but it's sort of hard to find these characters in any way scary again after seeing this. But whatever, this series stopped being about the scare factor a long time ago.
You cheated! Besides, didn't your mommy ever tell you that you can't count a rainbow? The next time you see a rainbow in the sky, that is me coming to your house!
After beating the game, you can enter a house in the main hub, where you find a man sitting at a table, who laments about something becoming a mess, and how hard it's becoming to try and please everyone. Do I need to mention who this is supposed to be? But I guess Scott quickly realized that instead of venting publicly in his video game, that it's best to put a spin on this. And so after beating the Halloween update final boss, Debbie Derryberry, we finally get this conclusion. Yep, another game. Yay. In the end, I appreciate what Scott attempted to do with Fnaf World. He took a mistake and tried to rework it into a fun meta experience for true fans of the franchise. And even though I didn't enjoy it personally, I know a lot of people loved this angle. So it's good he was able to get back in the fans' good books. And it's definitely a Chad move of him to refund the game and release these updates for free. And after this mess, we'd finally get a glimpse at the true future of Five Nights at Freddy's. This is where I finally had to get my wallet out and start buying the rest of these games. Everything from here on out is unmarked territory for me, so let's see if it was worth coming back to this franchise after all this time. The trailers for Sister Location made it seem like the most different game yet. We got these slick new animatronics with actual voice acting.
If you feel you are in danger, feel free to disconnect the interface temporarily until it is safe to reconnect.
I can see those Freddy Fazbear pet checks are finally starting to pay off, Scotty boy. Alright, so in this game you take control of Michael Afton, the son of William Afton, who has created animatronics for a sister location to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You'd think this means it follows a separate storyline to the originals, but nope. Either way, I'm getting ahead of myself. This new possession posse consists of Funtime Freddy and his puppet Bonbon, Funtime Foxy, Ballora, and the leader Circus Baby. Michael Afton works in the underground facility for animatronics that can be rented out for children's birthday parties. So each night has you doing a different task provided to you by your hand unit, who is this very funny and quirky little machine who says random, memeable quotes such as, exotic butters, and exotic butters. The fan base sure didn't run that one into the ground. This one is a lot less about finding out animatronic patterns and using that to your advantage, with each night taking you through the same scenario just slightly harder each time. And instead it'll have you doing a variety of things, such as trying to reset the facility's circuit breakers, making sure the animatronics stay on their stage. The robots even kidnap you at some point and stuff you inside a suit where you have to fight off a bunch of Ballora's mini arenas. While different, I think this does a good job of keeping the player on their toes. You never know what you're gonna get, and each task provides a new gameplay style for you to get used to, so tensions are high when you have to figure out what's going on, while also fending off whatever comes your way. Saying that though, I don't think this one really lives up to any of the others in terms of gameplay. The variety is nice and I understand the need for change. If this series was still nothing but 12 AM to 5 AM challenges, then I doubt it'd still be as popular, but a lot of it is just stop and go stuff like, hold down the power button, now stop, now hold it down again, now stop. Run forward. Now stop. Run again. Now stop. I just wish there was something more, you know? And staying true to the formula of 5 nights makes it a little short. But speaking of night 5, by the end you have the option to achieve one of 2 endings. One fake and one real. So as not to confuse things, let's go over the fake ending first. So during night 5, Baby instructs you to destroy her body in the scooping room. However, if you receive a keycard during one of the mini-games, you can follow a different route to find a small room where you have to fend off Ennard until 6 AM, in a similar style to the other games. This is a neat little Easter egg, until Ennard follows you home and kills you. We also see here the Fredbear and Shell's room from Fnaf 4. What could this possibly mean? Anyway, the true ending involves you following Baby's advice and killing her. She and the other animatronics combine into Ennard and lure Michael himself into the scooping room, where his guts are scooped out and he's killed. Then Ennard pulls a reverse card, and this time the animatronics hop inside the human skin, wearing it as a suit to escape the place. Well, until they realize, oh yeah, this was like a living thing, with the corpse of Michael slowly rotting, and Ennard escaping into the sewers, where we then see the ruins of Fazbear's Fright from FNAF 3, where Springtrap emerges, meaning Springtrap is Purple Guy, and Purple Guy is William Afton, and William Afton is the guy who built the animatronics in the first place. But where did William even come from? That name wasn't mentioned before now. Well, I guess we gotta get into the books. So Scott for some reason fancied himself a writer, and made a few, well more than a few, books that aimed to expand the FNAF story. So this is the complete FNAF story up until this point. Henry's second name and William Afton become partners and open Fredbear's Family Diner. Because of its success, he then opens some more establishments such as the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and Circus Baby's Pizza World. After some children disappear, Freddy's closes its doors, but it's all good, they've still got Circus Babies to fall back on. That is until William's daughter Elizabeth Afton gets a little too close to Baby, and she proceeds to do whatever the robot version of Vor is. And so Circus Babies is closed for good, and William stores the bots underground in a storage facility right under his house. Then, because karma's a bitch, William's son Michael has his head bitten off with a bite of 83.
Was that the bite of 87?
And he's now going fully insane. I mean, I guess he didn't have all the screws there while kidnapping kids, but you know, more insane. Causing him and Henry to have a falling out. After this, William sneaks into another Fazbear establishment and kills another 5 kids, using a Spring Bonnie suit to lure them into the back where he... yeah. After this, the bite of 87 happens to Jeremy, who's the night guard in FNAF 2, and that restaurant also closes for good. Now, William has returned with his goal of destroying the original 4 animatronics, presumably after realizing his daughter's trapped in Baby and is all like, oh shit, you don't think those other guys are pissed I killed them? Unknowingly, all this does is release the kids' souls, and they attack William, who hides in the Spring Bonnie suit only for the moisture around to cause the locks to clamp shut and crush him to death, leaving him as Springtrap. Now, Michael, who I think has come back as a robot or something created by his dad William, I'm not sure about that, returns on a mission to save his sister from the soul of Baby in the underground facility. But of course he fails, getting scooped and his body is taken over by Baby and the other Funtime animatronics, who have now combined to create Ennard, this wire guy. But he finally rots and collapses on the floor, with Ennard escaping into the sewer. But surprisingly, Michael gets right back up and heads on like nothing ever happened because... he's gotta find his dad, I guess. 30 years later, Springtrap is unearthed from the boarded off room in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, and unleashes him back onto our world until 5 nights later when the building is burnt down, and he dies. Or does he? I can't believe there's more to this, but for the sake of keeping this in chronological order as the game's released, let's move on to the next entry. Okay, so I just found out about this game's existence a few weeks ago while downloading the games I missed. I was initially going to skip it because it seemed like just another free-to-play troll game, and... yep, this is about just what I expected from a lazy... oh, come on. So yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's 6. The one Scott intentionally released with little to no advertising, since apparently he felt hyping up another game for months with endless teasers would only cause fatigue within the fanbase. Again, showing how far he's come from Fnaf World. This dude put out the finale to his series for free. Again, Scott's a real Chad. After playing this little pizza minigame, you're presented with this, Scrap Baby, where you have to do an audio test on her to make sure she can be salvaged for parts, for your brand new Freddy Fazbear franchise. Yep, you're a franchisee in this game, and you save up money to purchase items and animatronics for your new pizzeria. But of course, while things seem fine during the day, at night is when it gets a little weird. Random animatronics will show up outside, and it's your job to take them in and make sure you're able to salvage them for extra cash. But be careful, as while you take your paper unnecessarily close to your face, the animatronics have the chance to attack you. But you can just send them back to their base positions with a controlled shock. After this, and while the restaurant is functioning regularly, you have to sit in the small enclosed office room, and do whatever tasks and order whatever materials you're going to need to continue functioning. But for some reason, whoever designed this room has cleverly included the feature of open vents right beside you. And since you're bringing in a new animatronic every night, this is practically an open invitation for them to come attack you. You can track where they're coming from and use your audio to your advantage, sort of like an evolution of the Fnaf 3 formula. And also turn off your ventilation system to draw less attention to yourself. I honestly think this is the least engaging out of all the Fnaf games, but I also think the Pizzeria Simulator aspect elevates it to one of the best games in the series. It's genuinely fun to save up and manage your money, contemplate selling out and taking ads even though it'll make the gameplay more frustrating later on, deciding whether or not to put this really cool item on display despite it having a very high risk of you getting sued, and seeing all the new dumb animatronics this game introduces. So we've got the Rockstar animatronics, which are slight redesigns of the main four, along with this new derpy one called Lefty, but we also have the mediocre melodies, consisting of Happy Frog, Mr. Hippo, Ned Bear, Pig Patch, and Orville Elephant. Wait a second. Oh my god, this man is a genius! There are also some more minigames you can buy with your hard-earned money, like the one where you run around as a little girl only for the visuals to get more and more creepy with the items being replaced by her dead dog and Golden Bonnie looming over her shoulder. And there's also one where you play as a man that's presumably Henry, where you can explore his house and find secrets. But that all feeds into the lore this game expands upon, which I will do so in a bit. So after 5 nights, it's finally the big party day. All the animatronics are geared up and revving to go and... Oh, I got the bad ending. Yeah, this game has multiple endings you unlock depending on how you perform at the pizzeria, like going bankrupt or being sued too much. Alright, this time I'm set up for the good ending. I've salvaged all the animatronics. Springtrap, who's been given a slightly different, and honestly, worse redesign. Scrap Baby, who was actually the original Baby in a new body after being ejected from Ennard after some argument thing, who is now being controlled by Funtime Freddy, who is also just in a new form called Molten Freddy. Look, I said the game concluded the story, not that it made sense. And it's here when all the pieces of the puzzle finally start to fit together, with the final cutscene.
You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
Okay. So here is the story of Five Nights at Freddy's to the best of my understanding, along with the help of like 50 different Reddit posts and YouTube videos. Thank you, Matt Pat. So, Henry's second name and William often become partners and open Fredbear's Family Diner. It's successful and he then opens some more establishments such as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and Circus Baby's Pizza World. After some children disappear and a child is murdered outside Freddy's, it closes its doors, but not before the security robot Henry develops goes outside and becomes one with the child. That's the puppet, by the way. Later, William's daughter Elizabeth often gets a little too close to Baby and she proceeds to do whatever the robot version of Vor is. And so Circus Baby's is also closed for good, with William storing the robots underground in a storage facility right under his house. Then, because William is basically tormenting his son by having Fredbear cameras all around his house, it gives him a deep fear of his animatronics. Which is only perpetuated by his brother being a total dick to him, which ends up in his brother's head being shoved inside the suit of Fredbear and the kid's tears causing the locks to close and crush his skull in, meaning, bite of 83, William goes insane, yada yada yada. After this, William sneaks into another Fazbear establishment and kills another 5 kids using a Spring Bonnie suit this time to lure them into the back. After this, the bite of 87 happens to Jeremy, who is the night guard in FNAF 2, and that restaurant is also closed for good. Now, William has returned with his goal of destroying the original 4 animatronics, presumably after realizing his daughter is trapped in Baby and wants to prevent the other souls from doing anything. Unknowingly, all this does is release the kids' souls, and they attack William, who hides inside the Spring Bonnie suit, only for the moisture around to cause the locks to clamp up and crush him to death, leaving him as Springtrap. Now, Michael, who again I think has now come back as a robot or something, created by his dad William, returns on a mission to save his sister from the soul of Baby in the underground facility, but of course he fails, gets scooped, and his body is taken over by Baby and the other Funtime animatronics who have now combined to create Ennard. But he finally rots and collapses on the floor, with Ennard escaping into the sewer. But surprisingly, Michael gets right back up again and heads on like nothing ever happened, and he's gonna go look for his dad. And it takes him like 30 years, because Springtrap is then unearthed from the boarded off room in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and is unleashed back into our world. Until 5 nights later when the building is burnt down and he dies. Except it's revealed that he is then still alive. So now Henry, I guess, is all like, oh yeah, I forgot that I had like a bunch of possessed robots after me for the past 30 years. And so uses the new Fazbear Pizzeria franchise to lure in the animatronics with the intent of burning the building down with them all inside, releasing their souls, and having them finally being able to be put to rest. Except for William, who has finally gotten his comeuppance. And finally what the box represents is finally revealed. It was the last location where the animatronics were destroyed. I think. Again, there's a lot up for interpretation. I'd recommend checking out this video by Misty Sparkles. It was a pretty funny summary of it all. I can't believe I went all these years thinking, yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's is dumb. Scott just keeps drip feeding information for a story he'll never have the balls to complete. Only to start researching this video and realize the story finished like 3 years ago. And I think this was a very satisfying conclusion. You know, it's the only one of these games that seems to actually tell the player what's going on, instead of just implying 50 different things. And while Scott initially wanted to provide a custom night update for this game, it became so big that he decided he'd just release it as its own standalone thing. Yeah, the story is over, but we've still got like 3 more games to look at. Fortunately, though, I'm not going to spend too much time on Ultimate Custom Night. It's just a mode where you challenge yourself in lasting from 12 AM to 6 AM from every single animatronic in the series. Just classic FNAF. I'm already not the best at these games, so I knew going in I wasn't going to enjoy this one as much. It's insane how much memorization and strategy goes into being good at this, and I just wasn't up for it. I mean, just look at Markiplier. Now let's pretend that's me. Whoa, look at me go. This is a great footnote to end the series on, and fans have even theorized that this is William Afton's own existential hell, with him being haunted by Golden Freddy for the rest of time, which I think is a neat little way of dropping this into the canon. So that's it. We finally have a satisfying conclusion, and Five Nights at Freddy's can finally be put to rest. You know, unless Scott were to have some sort of soft reboot or something. Scott finally handed the franchise off to an actual development studio this time, with Steel Wool Studios developing Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, a VR game that initially seemed to just be a direct remake of the original games and nothing more. So I can just skip this, right? No need to dwell on the games I've already talked about. Think again. Yes, I really bought a VR headset just for this FNAF video for one game. I've got a Patreon, by the way. I've got, you know, a merch store. A new design just went up. I think it looks pretty cool. You should check that out. I gotta tell you, being right up next to Fazbear and crew was a truly terrifying experience. I don't usually get that scared by horror games because I'm so epic and cool, but this is like on a whole other level of horror. These guys are massive. It really takes experiencing this game in VR to recontextualize the rooms you're in for the past games. Like in FNAF 3, I always knew there was a vent right beside me, but actually being able to turn around and look down was terrifying, especially knowing I can now see Springtrap running down that at me. So other than remakes of the first 3 games, there is also a good amount of bonus games you can play, such as the Fun with Plush Trap game from 4, along with being able to explore the room while avoiding Funtime Freddy and Baby. Then there are the games where you get up close and personal with the animatronics, and have to repair them without making a wrong move. Having to put your hand inside the mouths of these guys is so scary knowing they could clamp down at any second. And the vent repair games, oh that was a fun one. Where you're doing different tasks to repair the vents while keeping an eye out for either Mangle or Ennard, who are climbing through to attack you. Despite being single player, this is actually the perfect game for a group of people to play. It's so tense, even just watching somebody go through it. And this isn't even to mention the... So what is that? So because why not, they decided this game was going to have a little story of its own. According to this, the events of all previous FNAF games were nothing more than untrue ghost stories, with no actual resemblance to real-life events. And to get rid of their bad reputation, Fazbear Entertainment have created a silly little VR game to mock these stories. As you're playing, you can find cassette tapes around each location, and heading to a secret room allows you to listen to developer logs, which warn of a hidden glitch that seems to be affecting the people who test the game. Weren't you making fun of poor creepypastas a couple games ago? Anyway, this is where this guy comes in. Glitch Trap. The lady in the tapes tells you about the previous beta tester, Jeremy. Yeah, they really like that name. Who slowly started acting more and more strange the more he played the vidya, and eventually tries to give you information on how to kill it. Only issue is that as you collect the final tape, you start to realize that the old tester failed at her mission, and instead of killing it, tore apart its code and scattered it all around the game. The same code you've been piecing back together the entire game. The tapes. After this and beating every new stage, a new level is unlocked. Pizza Party. In this you travel around a maze consisting of rooms from each and every FNAF game spliced together, until the ending reveals that this was all just a ploy from the glitch trap, to lure you into the back of the restaurant and kill you. Finally, I can be Freddy Fazbear in the IRL. Seriously though, that's just the bad ending. What you can do though, is use the tape girl's sudden change of advice, where she now wants you to collect the tapes now, to try and destroy it. And by pressing the button in your main hub area, you finally feel. The theory behind this is that the more she played, the same thing that happened to Jeremy happened to her, and now she's possessed by the glitch trap. Meaning she is trying to then switch places with you, leaving the game on a cliffhanger as they walk off into the distance. Which is strange considering it's still seen as the good ending, despite it being great. Not only are you trapped in the game, but you also let the virtual demon version of William Afton escape in your body. Congratulations! So as you can see, despite still referencing the events of the previous games, this definitely appears to be Scott's way of acknowledging the past, while beginning to show us the new direction which the franchise will be taking, which is further exemplified with the Halloween update. I won't go too deeply into this, it's just more fun minigames. Some aren't great, but a lot of them are pretty good. I'd recommend picking it up, there's a lot of content. This is the first FNAF game to be full price, but I'd say it's completely worth it. But anyway, in the Corn Maze minigame, you can collect a key that allows you to go down into a bunker where you're presented with a single white rabbit mask, which sets up the next FNAF game, Security Breach, which is yet to release, so I guess we'll see where this new story takes us. Overall though, this is my favourite FNAF game. There's a desktop version you can get, but I think it needs to be played in VR. Not only for the added hand which makes things a lot easier, but it's just so frightening being put in this position, and getting to see the animatronics finally walk and roam around. I love this a lot. My only complaint though would be that the jump scares, again, are the weakest part. To make sure that you don't just like turn around or down so you don't actually get jump scared, they've made it so it just plays a video clip in front of your face instead of it happening in real time. Which means they can't really predict where the player is going to be, so the background is just plain black. And that's sort of immersion breaking at times, but it's not a huge issue. So, where was FNAF headed now after releasing the best game in the series? I wanted to play this augmented reality game, but my phone is too old to be able to download it. And while I'll happily buy an Oculus Rift for the sake of a video, I draw the line at a new phone. It looks fine, let's move on. Whatever, let's do it. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. How do I skip this? I have no idea if this is even going to be as effective since it's like the middle of the day, but... Headphones. Let me put on my headphones.
Your lucky day. We've sent our highest rated animatronic as a preview of our sensational service. Freddy Fazbear is on.
Wait, this is like one of those new iPhones. They don't even have a... Lovely. Everyone can see how messy my room is. I just moved in, I swear. Where is he? I pressed.
That sure was fun.
Okay. Well, it didn't even give me... I pressed the button, and then the game started like freezing and lagging. I love whenever you install a game now. And then it's like, great, you installed the game. I install some more. I'm ready for Freddy. It's not even finished downloading yet. Whoa, he's standing on my chair. I felt like that was really there, in the room with me. This is boring. And that's it. Hard to believe I spent this long talking about a series I haven't had any interest in for years. But I gotta say, I had a ton of fun with this. And I'm definitely gonna be keeping up with the next release, Security Breach, which we've recently just got our first glimpse at, and seems to be the biggest game in the franchise yet. This series went from a simple trend to the butt of a joke for years, only to bounce right back and become yet again one of the most beloved gaming franchises of all time. I think this is all a testament to how cool Scott Cawthon is as a creator. Throughout the series, he was always willing to reach out to the fans, take on and learn from criticism instead of whining about haters, and went on to finally have his story come to a satisfying conclusion. And with every ending, there's then a new beginning. And I personally can't wait to see where this franchise heads to next. The dude said he'd even start funding FNAF fan games to try give other people a shot at becoming the next big indie game developer, which is such a Chad move. I know I'm saying that a lot, but God, I swear, he's a Chad. That's all I can say. That's the only word I can use to describe him. And all this work is without a doubt paid off. His games went from being played on some random site, to on the official Steam store, to even recently getting ported to consoles, so you can even take Freddy Fazbear on the go. Well, if you ignore those crappy mobile ports, I didn't want to play those. And Security Breach even got its own spot during the PlayStation 5 showcase, alongside games such as the new Resident Evil and Spider-Man. If that's not inspiring, I don't know what is. So I'll see you next time, probably with a review of the FNAF movie whenever that decides to come out. And I'll... What? The books? Dude, there are like 10 of those. You seriously did not just ask me to read?